I'll follow up to some of the immigration news from over the break. Does anybody around here think that the southern border is secure?
What I can tell you is this is a president has been working since day one to work on border security, to make an immigration a priority. That's why he put forth a comprehensive immigration reform plan, legislation. And here's the thing. As the president is coming forward and trying to come up with solutions, the difference here is that you have Republicans, as you know, who are doing political stunts. And, and we've called that out.
First off, is the president willing to be interviewed by federal investigators about his handling of classified documents?
So first, let me just say, I'm just not going to get into hypotheticals. This is something for the Department of...
Not a hypothetical question. There's an investigation ongoing. Will the president speak to investigate?
It's in ongoing review, right? You're asking me about something in the future, and I am telling you that I'm not going to get ahead of what the Department of Justice is going to decide. Look, I want to reiterate what you heard from the president today. It is important for the American people to know this, is that the president has said he takes classified documents and information very seriously. This is something, as you all know, that he will not shy away from saying, and has continued to say this week. And again, he was surprised that these records have been found. He does not know what's in them. And his team, once they identified that these documents were there, they immediately reached out to the archives, to the Department of Justice, and rightfully so, did the right thing by turning that over. And they have been cooperating very closely with the Department of Justice. You actually heard AG, Attorney General Garland, say today that they heard from his team really shortly after the discovery. And so, I just want to make sure that this is understood, that he takes this very seriously.
So speaking of him taking this seriously, this is the kind of thing that can cause government employees to lose a security clearance. This is a serious matter, as the White House has said. Was the president sloppy in his handling of classified material if there are multiple locations where classified documents are being found?
Look, I said it in the statement. It's in the statement from his lawyer, Richard Sauber, and at the end, he said, we are confident that a thorough review will show that these documents were inadvertently misplaced, and the president and his lawyers acted promptly upon discovery of this mistake. I'm going to leave it there. That's what his lawyer said. But again, this is something that the president takes very seriously, and we have been coordinating. They have been coordinating, his lawyers have been coordinating very closely with the Department of Justice.
The last thing is, the initial statement from the White House came out on Monday. The president addressed this on Tuesday in Mexico City. All the conversation was about the documents in the office. However, according to the Attorney General, documents were found on December 20th in his garage in Wilmington. Why was that not immediately addressed? Is the White House being transparent about that if that was already known and not discussed up front?
So, you said transparent. I want to say that we have been transparent here. That is why the minute that his lawyers found those documents, they reported it. They reached out to the archives and the Department of Justice, and they did that voluntarily. And they were not compelled to do it. They did it voluntarily. Now, I want to step back a little bit as you're asking me about the timeline. Look, the lawyer said we have been working closely with the Department of Justice and coordinating a search that was still ongoing to ensure any additional documents were in the proper possession of the government. After that search, after the search concluded last night, we released a statement disclosing the facts from that search, as you all know, this morning. This is all part of the Justice Department process, and you heard the Attorney General speak to this today. So we are being very careful to be fully cooperative with the Department of Justice and providing details as appropriate as part of that process.
So why did you fully describe the documents when we were firstly asked this week?
Because, and I actually answered that question. I said because there was a process happening that was currently ongoing, and I'll refer you back to my comments that I made just yesterday. Go ahead, Mary.
Just a couple of things I want to clarify, just to make sure that our reporting is as accurate as possible. The special counsel's, the White House counsel's statement this morning said that documents were found in the president's Wilmington residence garage and in an adjacent room. But when the president mentioned this himself in person earlier, he said they were found in storage areas and in his personal library. So can you just clear this up? Which room, where were the documents actually found in his residence?
Okay, so let me just step back because I know all of you will have a lot of questions. So I'll lay this out very clearly and precisely. I want to make sure no one is confused. As you just said, Mary, as soon as the president's lawyers found these documents, they immediately contacted Archives and Department of Justice, as I've said many times already, to ensure that they were handled properly. The president has said this: we are being fully cooperative with the Department of Justice Justice throughout this process, as part of the President's lawyers, look through the places where documents could have been stored, and the counsel's office released, as you said, a statement explaining that, so I would refer you back to the statement. I don't have anything more to say, but that search was completed last night, and now this is in the hands of the Justice Department. So look, I want to be very prudent here, as I said yesterday, as you all have reported over and over again. About any questions about this, any specifics, there's a review going on, and I would refer to Department of Justice or my colleagues in the counsel's office. But again, I'm just not going to go beyond what the President said. We just laid out the process that was taken.
It sounds like you're saying we should go off of the council statement saying it was found in the garage in an adjacent room.
I'm just saying I'm not going to go beyond what the President said. I'm not going to.
Right, what the President's saying is conflicting with the council.
Mary, I completely understand. I just want to be very careful because there is an ongoing investigation. I want to be prudent here and make sure if you have any additional questions about where things were found, again, I refer you to the statement. I'm not going to go beyond what the President said.
And one other point of clarification. The President said Tuesday he was surprised to learn about the documents at the Penn Biden Center, that he didn't know what was in these documents. He didn't sort of repeat that this morning about the documents found at his residence. So was he also surprised to learn that they were classified documents at his residence, and does he know any information about what's in them?
He was surprised that the documents were there, and that is also in line with what we shared this morning. And again, he takes this very seriously when it comes to classified information, when it comes to classified documents. And again, it still stays the same. He was surprised that the records were found. He does not know what's in them. That has not changed. And again, his team, when they identified that they were there, they immediately reached out to the archives, reached out to DOJ, just as they did last night, and as we have pretty much laid out previously.
And one more, just because much has been made of the differences here between the way you all have handled these documents and the way that the former president handled documents that were taken from the White House. When the FBI, Garland said when the FBI went to the location being the president's residence and secured these documents, did the FBI just retrieve documents, or was there a search of the residence?
Again, I'm just not going to go into the particulars or the specifics of what the Department of Justice did. I can speak to what we have done and what is already out there. We laid out a statement pretty extensively on Monday. We've been laid out a statement this morning on what was found last night. I'm just not going to go beyond. I would refer you to the Department of Justice to give you the specifics on that. As you know, there's an ongoing process. There's a review currently occurring. Okay.
Thanks. Karine, can you shed any light on how the documents got to these places and why?
Again, there's an ongoing process. It's being reviewed. Don't have more to share. I'm going to let the Department of Justice answer any questions as they're looking at this.
Does the White House think that the appointment of a special prosecutor was warranted?
I'm not going to get into the decisions that was made by the Attorney General. I will say this, and you've heard me say this many times before. This is a president that believes in the independence of the Justice Department. This is something that he has been saying since the campaign, and you've heard me say this over and over in restoring that independence. So look, we have been very, very careful here not to appear from the White House to influence their decision making on any number of issues. As you've heard me say over and over again, I've said this many times. I'm sure someone has counted the amount of times that I've said that the Department of Justice is independent and we respect their independence. I am certainly not going to comment on or give my opinion. Are we going to give our opinion on what the Attorney General laid out today?
What broadly does the White House make of comparisons between President Biden's handling of documents and former President Trump's handling?
I'm not going to get into politics from here. What I can say is what I've laid out, which is the president takes this very seriously. He does. He said this twice. And he did not know that the records were there when they were found. He does not know what's in them. And what he did and what his team did is the minute that they realized that the documents were there, they reached out to the archives, they reached out to the Department of Justice. And I'll just leave it there, and I'll leave you all to pontificate and do your punditry. I will not do that from here.
Thanks, Karine. In the statement from the special counsel that the second set of documents says the lawyers have completed the ongoing review by the president's legal team last night. Does that mean there are no other locations where documents could be stored? There's no other search underway at this moment in time for documents from the Vice President's side?
So as I'm just going to, again, that statement pretty much lays it out, that they have, as part of the lawyers, they look through the places where documents could have been stored, and the counsel's office released a statement on that. Now it is in the hands of the special counsel.
So we should assume that it has been completed?
You should assume that it's been completed, yes.
Okay, and then I just want to score something that Chris was asking about. The review was underway when you guys gave a detailed statement about the first set of documents. The review was underway when the President spoke about the first set of documents. You're now saying that you didn't talk about the second set of documents, discovered almost a month prior, because a review was underway. I don't understand, it doesn't make any sense.
No,
The review was underway the entire time. The only difference was that reporters had information on the first set of documents, and therefore you chose to exclude the second set of documents until reporters got information on the second set of documents.
Well, let me unconfuse you for a second, Phil. Look, we are trying to do this by the book, and I said yesterday this was under review by the Department of Justice, and the process is as such. When the President's lawyers realized that the documents existed, that they were there, they reached out to the archives. They reached out to the Department of Justice. Rightfully so, may I add. That is what you're supposed to do as lawyers. That's what they did. And they have fully been cooperating with the Department of Justice. And again, I said this earlier in answering a question. You heard from the Attorney General. He said shortly after the documents were discovered, that we did outreach. The President's lawyers did outreach to the Department of Justice and archivists.
Nobody's questioning that. That's not what we're asking about. We're asking about...
I'm telling you that there's a process. I just laid out what the process is.
I'm asking
And I'm
about the
telling you that
public
we
process
were
of-
trying to do this by the book, and it was an ongoing process. I'm not going to get beyond that, but that is how this works.
How can you say this
Yeah.
was transparent
Okay.
when you've sat on this information for more than 2 months?
Thank you, Karine.
Thank you.
We are,
Justin.
Thanks, Karine. I did want to kind of follow up on what Ed and Phil were asking, which is putting aside the question of whether the President's lawyers acted properly in handing the documents over, there's this lingering question of why there wasn't an acknowledgement of the second set of documents earlier this week. And you said that you're working through a process and going by the book, and what I'm curious is if you're trying to sort of hint at the idea that the Justice Department asked you not to reveal the second set of documents, or you were told in some way not to disclose anything that had not been made public.
I would not jump to those two conclusions. That is not what I'm stating. I am genuinely saying to you there is an ongoing process that we are going to follow, and I am limited in what I can say from here. That is why my White House counsel colleagues we refer to them these past couple of days. Now this is in the hands of the Department of Justice, as you all heard from the Attorney General himself.
I think I guess I remain confused. If the Justice Department didn't ask you not to disclose these documents, why on Monday, as this news was coming out, Tuesday, as the President was talking about it, you didn't say, here's everything we know at this point? You know, the first set was found at the Penn Biden Center, the second set was found at his office. We're searching to make sure that there's nothing else.
Because there's an ongoing process, and you heard directly from the Attorney General today. And that is the process. That is how this is going to go. It is not going to come from here, from me at this podium. It is going to come from the Department of Justice. And that is just the process that's happening currently.
thank you, Karine.
Thank you.
We are seeking information, and I appreciate and understand why the press office can only say so much. So help us understand this. Who are the President's personal counsel that the Attorney General referred to today?
I was asked that question earlier. Let me get back to you. I actually don't have that answer. I think I know who it is, but I want to make 100% clear.
Bob Bauer is one, potentially Dana Remus, James Garland, Robert Lenhart. Are
look,
they the ones that have been
so
contacting the Justice Department?
Look, again, I don't want to, I want to say the right thing from here, so I would have to talk to the White House counsel, or you would have to reach out to the White House counsel to talk about who is his personal lawyers.
And to button this up, the first set of documents were found in November at the Penn Biden Center here in Washington. But why did it take until yesterday and until this morning, apparently, for whoever it was to inform Robert Lausch that that final document was found? Was that because there were press reports earlier this week?
Again,
And the hope was that nobody would find out?
Again,
Or was it because,
there is a process, an ongoing process that is occurring. We did this by the book, and what I mean by that is the moment that the lawyers discovered that the papers were there or the documents were there, they reached out to the archives, they reached out to the Department of Justice, and they immediately, rightfully so, reached out to them to let them know what they had discovered. And that is the process. That is what that is what his lawyers did. Again, it's an ongoing process. As you stated in your question, I am limited in what I can say. It is now in the hands of the Department of Justice. They are reviewing this. As you know, the special counsel was announced by the Attorney General, and so I will leave it there.
what was the president trying to say when he referenced his Corvette earlier today? Because it sounded like he was implying that because his garage is a safe place for his car, the documents were safe. And therefore, if it was safe for the car, it was safe for the documents. Is that what he meant?
Look, I'm going to just leave his statement as is. I think your colleague was having a back and forth with the president. You can read the transcript of what was asked of him and why he responded that way. I'm just not going to get into specifics.
And you talk about we are being transparent. Who's we, and what is the definition of transparent in this case? Is it the lawyers being transparent legally with the archives and the Justice Department, or is it the White House writ large being transparent with the general public?
So number one, and I've said this multiple times already, we take this very seriously. The president takes this very seriously. He was not aware that the records were there. He does not know what is in the documents. Again, classified information, classified documents, he takes very seriously. When they were discovered, and this is the right thing to do, right? His lawyers reached out immediately to the archivists. They reached out to the Department of Justice to let them know that the papers or the documents
Was it
assisted.
the archivist or the Justice Department? Because the Attorney General this morning said that the attorneys reached out to the archives. It was only later in December, when the second batch was apparently found, that then they were reaching out to the Justice Department.
I will leave it to what the Department of Justice is laying out. What we are saying that we reached out to the archivists, we reached out to the Department of Justice. That is what is the right thing to do in this case. And not, and so I can finish here. What has been transparent in this as well is that the White House counsel has laid out in detail on Monday to all of you.
Not everything, Karine, and you know that.
First of all, I can't talk about this, right? Because it is, the Department of Justice is reviewing it. There is a review happening, Ed, right? You know this. We just heard from the Attorney General. There is a review. I am limited in what I can say to this.
Could Richard Sauber perhaps come here?
I think you should reach out to the White House counsel.
We're reaching out on a constant basis, so
Okay,
why not have them come here to the
I am
room to
saying
take
to you
questions?
that we have put out lengthy statements, and you can reach out to them, as you all have been doing, and I will leave it there. Go ahead,
I
go
was
ahead,
expecting you
go
to
ahead.
discuss
Go ahead,
it.
Justin.
Why not have them come and answer the questions?
They have been talking to you all pretty regularly the last couple of days. They have put out lengthy statements on this. I just read out what Richard Sauber had to say, and I would refer you to the White House counsel. I am limited in what I can say because the Department of Justice, we see them as being independent when it comes to these types of issues. And so I'm not going to go beyond what the president said, and I'm not going to go beyond what the lawyers say. I have to go around. You've asked me about, you've asked me,
Ed, that there's going to be a limit in transparency, public, non-legal transparency, in what can be shared and said by this White House.
I disagree. I disagree, Ed. There has not been a limit of transparency. That is,
A couple of basic geography questions you may not be able to answer, but is the library a room adjacent to the garage?
again, I don't have any of this information that I can provide. This is under review. I would refer you to the Department of Justice. I'm just not going to go into specifics here, not something that I can do from here.
And is the president's Corvette stored in the garage where the documents were found, just for pure fact purposes?
Well, I will basically repeat what the president said. His Corvette is in the garage. I'm not going to go beyond what the president said.
Okay, and on the transparency issue, would you admit that earlier this week the White House shared incomplete information? I think that when we all heard Merrick Garland say that these documents at the residence were found on December 20th, that they were notified, that was pretty surprising to all of us based on the statements that you and the president and the council's office had made.
Well, as I just said, as you saw in our statement, the documents that were found last night, right? They completed the search with documents being found last night. And then this morning, we put out, you heard from the White House counsel, we put out the information on specifically what was found.
But just one document was found last night.
The search was continuing, it was ongoing. The process, as I've been saying, was ongoing, and the search is clearly complete, and therefore we shared the information with all of you. Again, this is an ongoing process. I would refer you to the Department of Justice on any other specifics or particulars, even on timeline, or any other questions that you have.
Does Biden have any regret?
Right here.
I'm going to go back, go ahead.
A couple questions, but is the president confident? You said that the search has been completed, but is the president confident that there are no additional documents with classified markings that remain in any other additional locations?
Look, I can just refer you to what his team said. The search is complete. He is confident in this process, and I will leave it there. And they've been cooperating very closely with the Department of Justice.
And we've gotten a statement that the White House did not get advance notice that Garland was appointing a special
That is
counsel.
correct.
When did the president learn? How did he learn? Was it from the press conference? Did he get a heads up before that?
We learned from the press conference.
President?
The president, we were not giving a heads up, and we learned from the press conference.
He was in a funeral at the time. When did somebody tell him?
Right?
Look, he was at a funeral, to your point. Maybe one of his senior advisors may have told him. I actually don't know specifically when he knew, but what I can say to you, we were not giving a heads up. That I can confirm, as you all know already.
And have you had a chance to talk to him since then? Can
No,
you give us his reaction?
I have not had a chance to talk to the president about this or his reaction. Okay.
Does the White House feel like House Republicans have a right to conduct an investigation on documents issued? They've, of course, started sending requests and saying they're going to look into this. Does that fall in the realm of sort of legitimate requests from House Republicans right now?
Look, I'm not going to speak to what the House Republicans decide to do. What I can speak to is that we are, the president's lawyers is complying, and they are working on this with the Department of Justice, as they have been. Again, this is something that the president takes very seriously when it comes to classified information, when it comes to classified documents. I'm just not going to go into what the Republicans on the House do or don't do.
And then, sorry, just
So now, as you all know, there's a special counsel dealing with this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. Another one on GarageGate. What is the White House trying to hide?
Nothing.
Someone gave the president a statement to read on Tuesday that was incomplete at best, misleading at worst. Who?
So I have read out the president's statement. I have read it out yesterday and what he said. He said that he respects, or he takes classified information and documents very seriously. That's what he said. He said that he did not know that the records were there. He does not know what's in them. He said that. You heard from him directly on this. And his team has been cooperating fully. And not only that, again, I'll say this, the Attorney General said this himself, that he heard from the team shortly after. So we have laid out what has occurred here. You've heard from the White House counsel. I just read the statement from his lawyer. And again, we take this very seriously, and the president does as well.
When will the White House release a log of visitors to the Wilmington House?
Peter, you've asked this question, or your colleagues have asked this question before. Let's not forget what we did here in this White House. We instituted something that the last administration got rid of, which is putting out the White House, making sure that there was a White House log, extensive White House log, so the American people got to see.
House where there is potentially unsecured, classified material.
Again, I am telling you, we did something that the last administration got rid of, which is instituting the White House logs. Did you ask the last administration why they got rid of the White House logs?
I was the campaign reporter covering Joe Biden in Wilmington.
Well,
We don't
Fox
know who
did.
had
Go ahead.
access.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
We have the records.
The question. Go ahead, Kristen.
Just a couple of outstanding clarifications before I get to questions. Sauber said there were documents in the garage and one document in an adjacent room. Merrick Garland said the DOJ was informed of one additional document this morning. Is that the same document? the additional document and the document found in the adjacent room.
So let me just say, during the review, and this is so that folks know, the lawyers discovered among personal and political papers a small number of additional Obama-Biden administration records with classified markings. All but one of these documents were found in storage space in the president's Wilmington residence garage. One document consisting of one page was discovered among stored materials in an adjacent room. No documents were found in the Rehoboth Beach house. Look, I just want to underscore that this is something, again, that the president takes very seriously. It underscores how we executed the search with the DOJ to make sure that they continued cooperating fully with the review. And I think that is what we are trying to be very clear about, is that we have been, the president's lawyers has been cooperating fully. I'm not going to get into the specifics as to, you have the statement. I would refer you to the president's lawyer or anything else specifically on this, or the Department of Justice, because they are actually reviewing this currently.
To go back to something we were trying to pin down yesterday, can you tell us today, when did the president find out initially about that first batch of documents and then the second batch? Our reporting says he was told on November 2nd. Is that true?
So what I can say to you is that the president has been kept informed by his counsel throughout this process. I don't have a specific date, but I can tell you that the president was kept informed throughout. Don't have a timeline to share for you right now. Again, this is under ongoing review, and so want to be careful and prudent of what I share here at the podium.
When the search started and why they were searching in the first place, was the president concerned that there may be classified documents? Did someone tip them off? What sparked this?
Again, I'm just not going to go into details from here. I'm not going to go into specifics from here. This is this review is continuing, is ongoing. I would refer you to Department of Justice.
You have said repeatedly, the president has said he takes classified documents very seriously. If that's the case, why were these classified documents being stored in his garage?
Look, again, and not just me, he has said this. You have heard the president say this twice already, and he's said this before. Classified documents and information, he takes that very seriously. And you see,
the garage is an appropriate place to store.
I'm not going to go into what he thinks or how he feels about what is currently happening. What I can say for sure, when it comes to this specific issue about classified documents, about classified information, he takes that very seriously. He did not know. Right? He did not know the records were there. He was surprised that the records were there. So let's be very clear. That is something that the president shared with all of you on the world stage and also recently today. And so what occurred was, as I've said multiple times before, is when his team identified that these records existed, they handed them over to the archivist and also the Department of Justice.
Just one more, Karine. Sure. Do you acknowledge that the fact that the White House did not reveal this to the public, despite the fact that you've known about it for months, undercuts the president's promise of being transparent with the American people?
But here's the thing. They were transparent. There was transparency in doing what you're supposed to do when these items were discovered.
Not with the American people.
Look, I am here standing in front of you answering these questions, right? The president took 2 questions this week on this. You've heard, wait, let me just answer. You've heard from the White House counsel who put out multiple statements on this. And so, again, this is an ongoing process. We want to respect the process, and we have laid out very clearly what occurred. Again, don't want to get ahead of this. The Department of Justice, you all can will get your questions answered from them during this time, and so I would just refer you to the Department of Justice. And
Was the Corvette searched, Karine?
Thank you, Karine. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
Thank you, Karine. I have a couple of questions here, but I wanted to follow up quickly. You have said repeatedly that the president's lawyers did the right thing, but you also said earlier during the briefing of the president's lawyers immediately reaching out to the National Archives that, quote, they were not compelled to do it. They did it voluntarily. Is it the position of the White House that legally the president could have just held on to these?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they did the right thing, period. I wouldn't read into it. I'm saying that they did the right thing and they did it voluntarily because it is the right thing to do when you find these types of documents to indeed reach out to the archivist and reach out to the Department of Justice. So they, and outside of that, they have been cooperating very closely with the Department of Justice. It is and rightfully so, they did this.
But I guess I'm just a little confused and I want to move on. But what did you mean when you said that they, were not compelled to do it?
They did the right thing. That's it. I wouldn't go down into a rabbit hole on this. They did the right thing by reaching out to the archivist and to the Department of Justice.
Does the White House know how many stops these classified documents made before they ended up in his home in Delaware or in the Biden-Penn office? For instance, can you rule out that there was a third stop between a secure location and the garage?
Again, I would refer you to Department of Justice.
And then there was a question that was asked about the visitor logs with regards to folks who have come in and out of the president's home in Delaware. Does the administration have any idea between the garage and the Biden-Penn office just how many people could have gotten their hands on this? Or, are we to assume that the White House doesn't have an estimate? That
There's an ongoing review on this, and I would refer you to the Department of Justice.
Okay, and then, just finally, the president has said that his lawyers have advised him not to ask what was in these classified documents. I don't understand the purpose of that. He's the president of the United States. He has access
Because
to all
we're trying to
classified
do this by the book. We're trying to do this in the appropriate way. And so that's what I would say to you. His team has been complying, right, cooperating with the Department of Justice, and I will leave it there. I'm not going to go beyond.
The book says that he can't look at this. What would compel him or push him in that direction? Because you've said it repeatedly. What, I guess, as he tries to do this by the book, as he tries to do the right thing, what are his lawyers looking at that says, don't look at this classified information that was found?
Again, there's a process here. The process is that when the lawyers found that these documents existed, they reached out to the archive and also the Department of Justice. That is the process, and they have been cooperating closely, working closely with the Department of Justice. And now, as you've heard, the Attorney General made a statement today, and so I would refer you to them. All right, everybody. Thank you.
One more, because Ian did have that call today, and he said that the White House would, quote, fully cooperate with the investigation. Does that mean that President Biden is willing to be interviewed if called?
I'm just not gonna, you're asking a question that should go to the White House counsel's office. As you just said, Ian, you spoke to my colleague just moments ago. That is something that the White House counsel's office should be answering. Anything specific to the DOJ or special counsels, what they're doing, you need to reach out to them. Go ahead, Tam.
Are you upset that you came out to this podium on Friday with incomplete and inaccurate information? And are you concerned that it affects your credibility up here?
Well, what I'm concerned about is making sure that we do not politically interfere in the Department of Justice, that we continue to be consistent over the last 2 years, and that is continue to refer you all when it comes to an ongoing process, and I'll just leave it there. And let's not forget, there was actually a statement from the counsel's office that you all had at the same time as well. I'm just not going to go down any rabbit hole here. I'm going to be very consistent. I'm going to be very prudent, and again, I've been asked that question. I've answered it. It's been noted, the question, and we're just going to move on. Go ahead, JJ. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. I want to reference an interview that President Biden did in mid-September with 60 Minutes. And in that interview, he chided former President Trump for having in his possession classified documents. He called it irresponsible. First of all, do you think it was proper for President Biden to comment on an ongoing DOJ investigation?
So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to keep it really short today, as it relates to this particular issue, as it relates to an ongoing legal matter. I'm going to refer you to Department of Justice. with that specific, as it relates to anything that you want to ask of us about this legal matter, I would refer you to the White House counsel office. I'm going to leave it there, not going to go into further.
I'm simply asking you to comment
And
on the person that you work for.
I just commented. We're moving on. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead. I already answered your question. Go ahead.
You really didn't.
Well, I did.
No, you didn't.
Well, it's your opinion. It's your opinion. It's your opinion. That is your opinion. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Questions today.
Sure.
First of all, can you just walk us through the administration's rationale for wanting South Carolina to be the first primary state, and your reaction to the unhappiness we've seen from Democrats in New Hampshire?
Look, we have addressed this, the Democratic National Committee has addressed this. I'm just not going to go any further to what we've already shared about this. So I'm just going to leave it to the statements that we put out just a couple of weeks ago on the process. I'm just not going to dive into the process from here.
Okay, then let me ask about the document issue again, so I can take another stab at it. But we don't know what's in these documents, but can the U.S. and is the U.S. working to reassure allies and partners that you can still participate in intelligence gathering and still be trusted with secrets? Are those conversations that the president is having right now, or that top of administration officials are having, for example, Jake Sullivan in Israel?
I'm going to say this. The president takes classified information seriously. You heard that directly from him. To classified documents seriously. You heard that directly from him last week. And I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to open this up for discussion. We have answered many questions when it is related to the documents. Any specifics that's related to this this review, this legal process, I would refer you to the Department of Justice. And any questions that you may have of us, I would refer you to my colleagues at the White House counsel's office. So I'll leave it there.
They're my questions about procedures here at the White House and not about anything specific related to the DOJ investigation. So I'm just wondering how this episode has prompted a review of the process in which staffers handle classified information, and how they are turned over to National Archives during a transition.
And to be clear, I'm going to refer you to my colleagues at the White House counsel's office. They will be able to address that particular questions. I'm just not going to address something that is even related to an ongoing legal process.
Why not? I mean, I'm having a hard time understanding why questions about procedure.
And I just said to you, the White House counsel's office will be able to address that question.
Is President Biden satisfied with the current SOP of handling classified materials here and turning them over to National Archives?
Again, I will refer you to the White House counsel's office. They're the people who would be able to answer that question about classified information.
So just to be clear, from this point on, are you not going to be taking questions about the classified documents?
I have been very clear over and over again. We are going to be prudent here. We're going to be consistent. This particular matter is being looked at. There's a legal process currently happening at the Department of Justice, and I'm going to refer you to the Department of Justice on any specifics to this particular case, and anything that has to deal with what we're doing here, I would refer you to the White House counsel's office. And let me remind you, this is not a new process here. We've been doing this for the past 2 years. Anything that is related to a legal process, a legal matter, we refer it to the Department of Justice. There's nothing new in our, okay. Go ahead, Joey. Go ahead.
The president is scheduled to meet on Friday with a group of mayors. Can you just give us a preview of that meeting? How many mayors? What's on the agenda? What's the president's message? What does he hope to accomplish with this?
So as you know, he's going to, as you just mentioned, he's going to meet with mayors, bipartisan mayors who are attending the U.S. Conference of Mayors. This is something that the president certainly is looking forward to attending and to interact with the mayors who will be here. Don't have any more specifics as the list. Certainly, as we get closer, we will be sharing a list with all of you and more information about the remarks that he will be giving. thing. But again, it's going to be bipartisan mayors, an opportunity, as the president has said, and he has said during his Senate years as a vice president and during the campaign and now as president, he looks forward to working in a bipartisan way and continuing to deliver for the American people. And that's what you'll probably hear from him on Friday. But don't want to get beyond that. Haryana, way in the back. I'm going to go way in the back.
It's been over a month since the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit take place, and I would like you to give us an update what have been done so far in order to accomplish all the agreements and projects that have been agreed upon during the summit.
No, it's a very good question. Look, President Biden was very pleased with the summit and its outcome, including his personal engagement with many of his counterparts that week. The summit was an effective demonstration of our renewed partnership with the region's governments, business community, and civil society, as well as the broader African diaspora. The president and the African leaders worked together to define a shared global agenda and to set the stage for deeper cooperation and engagement in 2023 and beyond. So it was just the beginning, and we're truly looking to continue those conversations, clearly on the staff level, as we continue throughout the year.
How the president is feeling? Is he worried about those documents that were found, or did he somehow regret to what he had done with those documents being found at his property? Is he worried about that?
First, I'm going to repeat what I just said moments ago. He takes this very seriously when it comes to classified documents, when it comes to classified information. He was unaware that the documents were there. You heard that directly from him, from the president. Twice he spoke to this just last week. And his team is fully cooperating with this process, with this ongoing legal process. Anything specific dealing with this issue, I would refer to the Department of Justice or the special counsel, and I'll leave it there. Okay, I'll come.
Can I just follow up on that? We've all reached out to the Department of Justice. A law enforcement official tells NBC News the Justice Department has not told the White House that it cannot talk about the facts underlying the special counsel investigation into classified documents. So trusting you've received that same information, understanding the desire to be prudent, then why can't you speak about the underlying facts?
We've been very clear when it comes to even underlying facts, when it comes to specifics, when it comes to something that is under the purview, that the Department of Justice is looking at, especially legal matters, investigations. We do not comment from here, Peter. That has been consistent.
So
we've been
that
very consistent.
Bob Bauer, who represents the president's personal attorney over the weekend, said that one of the reasons why, and Ian Sams, your colleague who speaks on behalf of the special counsel at the White House, spoke to this in some form yesterday. But he said one of the reasons why they shouldn't reveal further details right now was regular ongoing public disclosures also pose the risk that as further information develops, answers provided on this periodic basis may be incomplete. When the White House did release a statement, the president spoke out on January 9th. The risk of incompletion was a function of the White House's decision not to share all the information it knew, in fact, because we knew on November 2nd, and the first discovery was made. We knew the second discovery was made on December 20th. So there's a risk of incompletion, but will you concede that it's the White House that has been incomplete in its provision of information when it did choose to speak out publicly on January 9th?
My colleague actually dealt with this question on the call yesterday on the White House counsel's office.
He made the same point
as
about the risk
you,
of incompletion.
and I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
Then is the White House having any conversations internally about finding someone, much the same way John Kirby has spoken on behalf of national security issues at this podium as your colleague, as their representative? Is there someone, is the White House in talks right now to find someone either outside the White House or internally who can speak on behalf of the White House representing the special counsel office within the White House from this podium, or any of those talks?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
Well, but you're the communications,
I
run
would-
communications, so I'm asking about you as a communications matter, playing any part
there
of
is-
those
you-
conversations existing.
Peter, you have spoken to my colleague who did, again, a 45-minute call with all of you, answering questions about...
If you would acknowledge it's on background, though, Karine, not on the record until the call ends, that means the American people can't see it in public. So we're asking, will there be a representative who would speak on camera and see it in public?
But the call was indeed, he was quoted, it was in papers, it was on networks.
Correct, but because they can't witness it happening live, Americans don't get the same transparency into this back and forth. Is the White House having a conversation?
Peter,
this is just with respect. You guys brought John Kirby in. I'm asking if that conversation exists.
The fact that he spoke to all of you reporters who report on this, and then you all reported on it back to the American people, I believe that is transparency. I believe that he shared information, he answered your questions that you believe that the American people wanted to hear, and he answered those questions.
So my
And
question is,
he took 45 minutes to do that.
For which
Anything else that you have on this, Peter, I would refer to the White House counsel. Peter, I'm not, we just went back.
So just the question is, are you having a conversation about adding a member to the staff to speak publicly on this?
Peter, I actually just answered that question. I said we have someone currently,
So that
right?
means no.
We have someone currently who answered your questions for 45 minutes on a call and took your questions.
Yes.
Took your questions about this particular issue.
Correct.
He will continue to do that. He will continue to engage with all of you, right, on this issue, on this legal process that's currently happening from the White House counsel's office. After that, Peter, I don't have anything else to share. Go ahead. Go ahead. Last question. Go ahead, Steve.
Thanks, Karine. After a special counsel was named, but before the FBI searched, President Biden went to his house in Wilmington. What was he doing in there?
I would refer you to the White House counsel.
So it was something relating to this case?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
Okay. Do you think that this story was leaked by someone trying to bruise the president politically ahead of a re-election announcement?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office, as they've been the ones who've been closely involved.
Okay. More basically, we know the president did it. Why did he do it?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
In the president's own words, he admits to having information that wasn't his. Why did he smuggle it out?
I will let the statement of the president stand for itself. I'm just not going to go into down a rabbit hole with you on this.
Why did he not tell you about it for months?
Karine, yes, thanks. Slight shift to topic. Haiti. I have two questions. And one of the benefits of asking questions this late in the briefing is that you don't have to be concerned with advancing the story incrementally of the day. You can just ask about sort of broader things. So with that in mind, first on the communications team, and then on the so-called culture wars. Where the president's communications are concerned, and I'm asking you because you work on his communications team, and you're a professional communicator. There is obviously a variety of settings the president can employ. Set pieces, impromptu remarks, teleprompter, no teleprompter, etc., etc. Is it the view of the president's communications team that he is equally adept in all settings in terms of communications, or are there some that play to greater strengths, some where he probably isn't as strong, etc.?
I will tell you this, the president is the best communicator that we have in the White House. Go ahead, go ahead.
Next question was on the so-called
Okay.
culture wars, if you would. I appreciate it.
Sure.
One of the most prominent themes that we hear from both elected Republicans and candidates has to do with what is called wokeism. And we hear about an anti-woke agenda. And this entire subject reminds me of what Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart once said about obscenity, that he couldn't define it, but he knew it when he saw it. And so we hear so much talk about woke capitalism, a woke military, and so on. And by way of trying to clarify this for the American people, I wonder if we couldn't begin with a threshold question, to wit, is President Biden woke?
So let me tell you what the president cares about and what's important to this president. The president doesn't concern himself about what Republicans are trying to do in creating political stunts, in making an issue out of the things that they feel benefits them politically, not the American people, not what matters to the American people, but what benefits them politically for their own ability to move forward. What the president cares about is exactly what I just talked about and what he talked about at the legislative conference, which is how are we going to continue to deliver for the American people. You heard him say that at the State of the Union. You heard him talk about how the economy has grown the last 2 years, the progress that we have made. And guess what? He wants to continue that progress. He wants to continue to move forward to make sure that we lower the deficit, which he did the first 2 years by $1.7 trillion, and be fiscally responsible. But he wants to work with Republicans on how we are going to continue to deliver, how we are going to build on the economic progress that we're seeing. That's not what they want to do. What they want to do is they want to cut Social Security. What they want to do is they want to cut Medicare, and they want to take us back and not actually deal with issues that matter to the American people. Can you imagine if you're an American out there and you hear your congressional member talking about how they want to cut Social Security, talking about how they want to cut Medicare, something that you have worked very hard for many, many years and paid into so you can get those programs. But yet, that Republican senator who we've been talking about from Florida has continued to talk about how they want to sunset these programs. That's not what we're about. We're about fighting for these programs, and that's what you're going to see from the president, and that's what he cares about. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Karine. Two questions, two different issues. First of all, on the abortion pill case, you said earlier in the briefing that you believe that this particular case will get to the U.S. Supreme Court, and you also expressed confidence that you win at the U.S. Supreme Court. What gives you that level of confidence?
Because let's not forget, we're talking about mifepristone, which has been around for 20 plus years, which is also around in 60 different countries, and it is something that FDA is allowed to approve. They have approved this, and we stand by the FDA when it comes to this. And I said, if necessary, right? We believe we will win. We will win this long fight if it goes to the Supreme Court, if necessary. That's what indeed occurs, because we are committed. We are committed to this issue. We are committed to making sure that women have access to mifepristone, but also can make their own decision when it comes to their own body, when it comes to this type of important reproductive health care decision that women should have. It is their freedom. It should be their freedom to have this.
And then the second question has to do with the lack of a press conference during the president's upcoming trip, and the lack of press conference that we see in general from this White House. I represent a news organization that owns 113 television stations, and a question that I'm often asked, and I don't know the answer to, so I'll ask you that question. Is the administration trying to protect the president from our questions? Please, answer
Absolutely
that question.
not. Absolutely not.
So why the lack of any interaction in a formal setting to have a press conference?
I mean, the president takes shouted questions. I understand, John. I understand.
Okay.
I understand. I've dealt with this question about 3 times already. I understand. It is the job of you all to ask this question to me. Totally get that, and that's not a problem at all. But certainly, the president many times has stood in front of all of you, has taken questions on his own, because he wanted to see what was all on your minds. He wanted to see what the questions you all were going to ask him, and he wanted to answer them directly. That has happened multiple times, many times during this administration, and that will certainly continue to be. When it comes to a formal press conference, I don't have anything to share with you at this time.
Just one last thing.
Yeah, sure.
Just to button it up. You recognize that as it relates to prior administrations, the president's predecessor, President Obama, President George W. Bush. I've been here long enough to have covered President Bill Clinton. This is not the norm. The norm is we do get an opportunity to ask the questions to the president about domestic and foreign policy issues in a formal setting at some point. And you choose that point, but we haven't had that opportunity in quite some time.
So I'll say this, it is also unprecedented that a president takes as many shouted questions as this president has, and he has.
I know the last
Okay.
administration, I'll tell you, almost every day on this
Okay,
building.
we'll certainly get the data and share that with all of you. I hear, John, I hear your question, I heard Zeke's question, I hear you. I hear you on the press conference, on a formal press conference. We get this probably every couple of months when you guys ask us about a formal press conference. I don't have anything to share with all of you at this time, and I'll just leave it there. Okay, Jeremy.
Thanks, Karine.
Karine, on the re-elect specifically, can you tell us when and how you learned that the president was going to announce he was seeking another term?
Just like all of you.
You learned about it from the video this morning?
Just like all of you. I am not from this perch, from being a government official. I cannot talk about 2024. I'm not involved in the re-elect, and I learned just like all of you this morning at 6 a.m.
And specifically on Senator Klobuchar's comments on Sunday about her position on what the president should do with respect to meeting with Speaker McCarthy. She said he should negotiate on the budget. That is the place to negotiate, and they should start those negotiations now, not using the American people and their mortgages as hostage, because right now you've got to simply make clear we're going to avoid default and get this behind us. Is that something the president would be open to? Is that something that he is ready from that specific suggestion to start at?
So look, here's what, and I said this at the top, here's what House Republicans are saying to us along with the Speaker. They are saying to us that that they want us to agree or to support, us meaning the Senate and the President, to agree with every agenda that they put forth in this bill. The entire agenda. And I said this at the top, that is not negotiable, and that is a devastating ask of us, especially what it's going to do to the American people. We've talked about the 22% cuts that it's going to make to programs that matters to veterans, seniors, our children. I mean, that's what they put forward. And to say to us that the only way you want to move forward here is for us to agree on everything that they laid out in this bill is just ridiculous. And so that's what we're talking about, right? We're not going to negotiate on something that they should be doing, which is avoiding default. And we've been very clear, we're just not going to negotiate on that. But when it comes to the budget, when it comes to how they want to see spending cuts for the American people, we'll have that discussion. But right now, that's not what we're seeing. That's not what they're doing. That's not what this bill is. It has linked those two things together. And we've been very clear that we are not going to negotiate on default.
Thanks, Karine. The LA Times said that their reporter did not submit any questions in advance of yesterday's press conference. So to people who saw that pocket card, can you explain how that ended up there and why the president needed something like that?
So just to step back, and I'm actually glad you asked that question. Clearly, I would let the reporter for Los Angeles Times speak for herself. It is entirely normal for a president to be briefed on reporters who will be asking questions at a press conference and issues that we expect they might ask about. It is not surprising that yesterday we would anticipate questions that he did receive, right, on the visit with the South Korean president, as the South Korean president was standing to his right, or about 2024. That was completely expected, or about the debt ceiling, which he took questions at the end, shouted questions at the end, and of course we would note those issues to him. Those issues to him will likely come up, and let's not forget, we do these briefings every day, and a lot of the questions that you all tell me, that's how we brief him as well. You all ask me, that's how we brief him as well. So look, we do not have specific questions in advance. That's not something that we do. And in fact, I would point out the questions that was asked was different than what was on the card that you all saw. And look, again, we have these press conferences. The president takes your questions. Our job is to get a sense of what you all want to ask him. That is our job here, to get a sense of what's the news of the day, the topics you all are interested to ask of him, and so that we are all, not just him, we are all prepared to take that seriously and to take that in a way that is going to be reported from our point of view, because we know that you all are reporting out to the American people and want to make sure you get our point of view of how we see these different issues that I even just laid out, whether it's 2024, whether it's what has been discussed or the agenda with the president of South Korea. Again, we take this very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're providing information that's helpful to you and the American people.
How are the reporters decided?
So the way that we have moved forward with this type of process is that we reach out to a number of reporters who we know are going to be at the press conference, and that's what we did yesterday. And also we try to be really mindful and who has not gotten a question in a while. And so, as you know, we could only pick 2 reporters yesterday, so that limits our ability on how many reporters we can call on. Mary's not here, but I can say one of the reasons that we picked Mary is because she was just named Chief White House Correspondent for ABC and had not gotten a question in some time. And we picked the Los Angeles Times, which has not gotten a question in some time. And I want to add that the fact that California has the largest South Korean American population in any state in the country, and LA has the biggest population of any city in America, and LAT is the biggest daily paper serving that population. So we are mindful on who we pick and who we want to communicate out to. And so that's how we move forward with Mary and Courtney. We thought that is pretty reasonable, wanting to, as we have the South Korean president with us during this press conference, because we wanted to also communicate with the Korean American. So that's usually how we move this process forward.
I'm sorry. Is it your contention, Karine?
I'm not taking call.
That the question that was on the so-called cheat sheet was not similar to the question that was asked at the press conference.
Your colleague is not done. Go ahead.
It's a very reasonable question.
No, but I hear you. Can you wait your turn? Thank you. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I really do. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
And just to be clear, to people, skeptics who saw the card and saw that question number 1 and might think that that is a signal that it was pre-organized. Did the president have other questions that he was prepared, had similar talking points in case he was asked something on other topics in that same?
Jackie, I'm going to be, as someone who was part of his, of the prep briefing with the president for these press conferences, as his press secretary, we talk about an array of topics that could potentially come up. And that's what we do. Just at the end, there was shouted questions, and he took those shouted questions. But we also had a sense that, hey, you might get something on a debt ceiling, which makes a lot of sense, which is one of the news of the day. So we cover an array of topics. It's not just the 2 Americans who ask questions. It was also the 2 South Korean reporters who asked questions. So we do our best to make sure that the president is ready to communicate with all of you and the American people. So yeah, we covered an array of issues. But of course, there are probably the top 5 topics, hot items that you all are interested in, and so that's kind of how we move forward.
And the last one
at this time.
And the retirements upcoming, the border chief and the ICE chief. Is that going to impact the administration's ability to manage the border in the near term?
So look, from what I understand, their retirements has been planned for some time now, and so just going to leave that piece to them, and certainly they can speak to their retirement. What I can speak to is what we have seen these past couple of weeks since Title 42 has been lifted. We've seen legal migration go down significantly, and that's because of the plan that this president has put forward. You think about diplomacy, you think about deterrence, you think about making sure that we're expanding legal pathways. That's what the president and his administration has been able to do, and that's why we have seen such a decline at the border. And I think that speaks to the president's leadership and what he's been able to do with his team, and I think that's incredibly important. Go ahead, Steve.
Real quick though, this whistleblower report alleging that the U.S. military has been retrieving craft of non-human origin for at least several decades. Are we alone? And if we were not, would you even tell us?
I would refer that question to the Department of Defense and let them answer that question for you. Go ahead.
3 subjects. First, since you mentioned Ukraine in your topper, Russian President Vladimir Putin says Ukrainian forces have suffered, quote, catastrophic losses. He says Ukraine lost 160 tanks and over 300 armored vehicles, while Russia lost 54 tanks. Are Putin's statements accurate?
So I'm just going to repeat what the president said during his remarks when you all saw him just moments ago when he was with the Secretary General of NATO. I'm going to leave Ukraine certainly speak to their military operations. That's something that we're going to do from here. As it relates to the comments that President Mr. Putin has made, as you know, we don't put stock in Russia's public assessment, and so I'll just leave it there.
And then on the big news of this afternoon, First Lady Jill Biden said it's a little shocking that many Republicans support Donald Trump after his indictment. What has President Biden said? Was he also shocked? Does he agree with his plight?
I'm just not going to comment on anything that's related to the indictment. We're just going to be very mindful here and respect the Department of Justice. Let them do their job.
And then lastly, the Office of Special Counsel has said that your use of MAGA Republicans violated the Hatch Act. What kind of guidance had you previously been given by the White House counsel on that matter?
So let me just lay this down. I'm really glad that you asked the question. I know there's been many news reports on this. So as we've made very clear throughout our time in this administration, that we do everything that we can to uphold certainly the Hatch Act and take the law very seriously. A couple of things that I want to lay out here. So with, many of you have mentioned with friendly consternation how often we take the Hatch Act and we follow the Hatch Act throughout these past 2 years. We received a letter from the Office of Special Counsel, which is the independent agency that enforces the Hatch Act, as all of you know, and it communicated it to us that their opinion and issuing a warning, but not taking further action, as you all know by reading the letter and the reports. The White House counsel's office is reviewing their opinion and is going to respond to them, so certainly not going to get ahead of how the White House counsel is going to respond or what's going to come out from that action. So now if you look at the archived Trump White House website, it contains about nearly 2,000 uses of MAGA to describe policies and official agendas. Congressional Republicans have also used MAGA to refer to policies and official agenda frequently for years now, even clearly before we entered the administration. And what's more, I also want to note that the opinion that you see that was presented by OSC happened just last week, which is it occurred months after the briefing where I made those comments. So basically, it is retroactive, right? The actions were retroactive after I had made the comments. So look, when basically what we're seeing by me laying that out is that we did not know their opinion when we were able to use when we were given the green light to actually say the comments that I made. So just want to make that very clear. But again, look, it's going to be reviewed. That's what the White House counsel is going to do. They're going to have a dialogue, a routine dialogue with OSC, and so I'll just leave it there.
Thanks, Karine. But it sounds like you disagree with the finding. Is that true?
No, what I'm saying is that we got this letter last week, and it was retroactive, right? The letter was retroactive. The comments that I made was months prior. And so we didn't know that was the opinion months prior when it was said. So what I will say now is that the White House counsel is going to have a routine dialogue like many administrations have in the past with OSC, and certainly not going to get ahead of that. I'm going to let that process move forward.
And just more broadly, since you cite the Hatch Act so often, what is your interpretation of it? What are your limitations?
So look, what I know is as it relates to an ongoing election right now, right, we're talking about 2024, we just are very careful. We are very careful to respect the law, the rule of law. We're very respectful to not speak as a federal employee, to not speak about the election, about candidates in the election, about anything that's related. Anything that you all ask me about the campaign, I'm very often, if not almost every time, refer you to the campaign. As it relates to this specifically, I just laid out, if you look at the archives from the Trump White House website, it contains nearly 2,000 uses of MAGA to describe policies and official agendas, right? And congressional Republicans have used that word multiple times to describe their policies and official agenda as well. I'm not going to get into any back and forth about this. I'm going to let the White House counsel have their routine conversation with OSC and let them handle it. Wow.
And then secondly, the president invited his son Hunter to the state dinner last night. I'm wondering if you could take us into the thinking and the decision-making of why the president decided to invite his son.
I'm just not going to get into family discussion, personal family discussion. As you know, Hunter is his son. I'm just not going to get into it.
Let me ask you this. If Hunter Biden wasn't the president's son, would he have invited someone who had just reached a plea agreement with federal prosecutors 2 days earlier?
A couple of things. Again, that's his son. He's a family member. It is not uncommon for family members to attend events at the White House. You could look at past presidents. I'm sure you have. So that is not uncommon. As it relates to anything related to Hunter, I'm just not going to respond to it from here.
Can I follow up on that?
Okay. No, I just called on somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Curley wouldn't answer James's question, though. Are you going to answer the question? I mean, not a reasonable question to ask whether the President of the United States was involved, as this message seems to suggest, in some sort of coercive conversation for business dealings by his son. Is that something, if he wasn't, then maybe you should tell us.
So here's the thing, and I appreciate the question. I believe my colleague at the White House counsel has answered this question already, has dealt with this, has made it very clear. I just don't have anything to share outside of what my colleagues have shared, and so I would refer you to him and the DOJ. Just not going to comment from here.
Text message.
What I can tell you is I know that my colleague has dealt with this. He addressed this at the White House counsel. I just don't have anything else to share.
In the shakedown attempt?
I just answered the question. I just answered the question.
No, you didn't. Yes or no, was the president involved in the shakedown attempt?
Stephen, I just answered the question. It's not up to you how I answer the question. I just answered the question by telling you my colleagues at the White House counsel has dealt with this, and I would refer you to them. Go ahead.
Karine, can you just remind us what your colleague said from the White House counsel so we have it?
I would refer you to them, and they will share their statement with all of you.
My question is about your statements from that podium. You've stated that the president stands by his comment from the 2020 campaign that he never once discussed his son's overseas business dealings with his son. And you stood at that podium and you reaffirmed that. Do you stand by your reaffirmation?
What I will say is nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. And I will leave it there. Anything else, I will refer you to the White House counsel.
This is not a change?
I just answered the question. You just asked me, does my statement change? I just told you nothing has changed. That's answering the question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The president was there 2 days
Go ahead,
prior.
Stephen. I'm calling on your colleague right now. Go ahead.
Thank you. To follow up on my colleague, is there anything that you can say with regard to this text message and what the president's son was alleging? Was the president there or not?
I would refer you to my colleagues at the White House counsel. They have addressed this, and I refer you to them.
Hi. I'm wondering if you have any comment about recent crime in D.C. It's raising rates. We've lost an SIV applicant from Afghanistan in the most recent killings. Really tragic. Wondering what the White House has to say about that. And then secondly, sorry to bring up cocaine again, but there was a question yesterday during the press gaggle with Andrew Bates that was, I guess, he said that he was avoiding it because of the Hatch Act. I'm just asking again, can we just say once and for all whether or not the cocaine belonged to the Biden family?
So, a couple of things there. He mentioned the Hatch Act because the question was posed to him using Donald Trump, and so he was trying to be very mindful. Okay, I hear you, but you're asking me a question, so I'm answering it for you. And so that's why he said the Hatch Act. So I would, have you read the transcript and read the transcript fully so you can see exactly what he was trying to say. So that's number one. So we're not avoiding the question. That is not true. We've answered this question, litigated this question for the last 2 days exhaustively. There has been some irresponsible reporting about the family. And so I got to call that out here. And I have been very clear. I was clear 2 days ago when talking about this over and over again as I was being asked a question. As you know, and media outlets reported this, the Biden family was not here. They were not here. They were at Camp David. They were not here Friday. They were not here Saturday. They were not here Sunday. They were not even here Monday. They came back on Tuesday. So to ask that question is actually incredibly irresponsible. And I'll just leave it there. Okay.
You know, since I've been in office, we've been carrying out my economic vision. All right. We carried out my economic vision to move from trickle-down economics to what everyone on Wall Street Journal, from the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times is calling Bidenomics. It's about growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, and because when that happens, the folks in the bottom have a shot, they get a chance to raise up, and the wealthy still do very well. It's not to hurt anyone at all. But today's job shows that, jobs report, shows that Bidenomics is working. We added 200,000 jobs, I think 209,000 jobs last month. And all told, we've created over 13 million. I think it's 13,300,000. 2.5 years, that's more than any president ever created in a 4-year term. And folks, the unemployment rate is below 4% for 17 straight months. Not since 1960 has that occurred. Inflation continues to fall. It's less than half of what it was a year ago. And the rate of Americans without health insurance is at an all-time low. Premiums are covered. Premiums for coverage of the Affordable Care Act are $800 less per person than before I took office. And that's Bidenomics. Today, I'm joined by healthcare advocates and leaders. Many of them, if I started to name you all, we'd be here all night. But I want to talk about key parts of my economic plan. We're protecting consumers and reducing healthcare costs without in any way hurting insurance companies, docs, hospitals, or anybody else. You know, in my State of the Union address, I outlined our fight to end junk fees and hidden charges for companies who sneak into your bills things that you don't think you're going to pay for. Each year, those junk fees cost hundreds of dollars a month for tens of billions of dollars, weighing on down family budgets and making it harder for people to pay their bills. Junk fees may not matter to the very wealthy, and it's not the wealthy's fault, by the way, but they matter to working folks in homes like the ones I grew up in. Over the past few months, my administration has cracked down on junk fees across different industries. Banking, hotels, concerts.
Something else. The Secret Service is paying $16,000 a month now to stage near Hunter Biden in Malibu. Who's paying for that?
That's a question for the Secret Service.
Okay, Hunter Biden is reportedly selling art to pay for his $15,800 a month rent in Malibu. How can you guarantee that people are not going to be buying this art to gain favor with the president?
That is a question for Hunter Biden and his representatives.
It's a question
I know.
of
I hear.
ethics at the White House. We know that one of the art
question.
buyers got a job from the Biden administration. Can you guarantee that there's no quid pro quo?
I hear your question. I'm not going to get involved in this. That is a question for Hunter Biden's representatives.
So, but we know that from a Hunter Biden associate now that he sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident that he has stopped doing that?
That is a question for Hunter Biden and
If
his
somebody is
representatives.
selling the appearance of access to the White House, that's a question for the White House.
No, that is your I don't know how you're perceiving that.
Sworn testimony by Devin Archer.
I know your dad had some thoughts about our back and forth yesterday, so maybe we should try this again.
Same question. Same question as yesterday.
Can you repeat the question?
What do you call it when 10,000 people illegally cross the border in a single day?
So here's what I will say, and you've heard me say this a couple times, and I'll say it again because it is the facts. On day one, the first day of this president's administration, he put forth a comprehensive immigration reform that we believe that was desperately needed for this country, right? As we know, and you've heard us say this many times before, we are dealing with a broken system. And no action was taken from Congress. And so what the president was able to do, he imposed consequences for those who do not have the legal basis to remain, and he has removed more than 250,000 individuals. This administration has done so since May 12th. And so we've taken action. The president has secured, he also secured record funding. And let's not forget, this record funding that the president fought for over the last year or so was opposed by the House Republicans. This is something that they opposed and didn't want to see. And so what it allowed us to do is actually hire about 25,000 more, bring on CBP agents, and really do something that was historic that we hadn't seen. And so a broken system, it's been broken for the past couple of decades. The last administration certainly gutted the immigration system for 4 years. That's what they did. And you had Speaker McCarthy and the Republicans in Congress who continuously take steps to undermine what is currently happening, trying to undermine getting border security. We saw that this week with the CR, where they put forth another piece of legislation to propose continuing to cut some important resources that's needed, whether it's CBP. 800 fewer CBP is what they wanted to do. 50,000 pounds of cocaine. That's what it would hurt, right? In trying to prevent that from coming in, right? When you think about more than 300.
Two questions on the border wall.
Sure.
First, just to clarify, the White House says that it's doing this only because it has to, no other reason, like a surge in border crossings or pressure from other Democratic leaders?
DHS was required to use this funds for their appropriated purposes to comply with the law. That's what they were required to do, and we're going to continue to call on Congress to take action, to work with us on dealing with border security, to make sure that we find smart ways and more effective ways to deal with the border, and that's what we're doing. And that's what we're going to continue to work on. We've done that as recently as this past August. We've asked for $4 billion in supplemental funding to deal with the border, and we need Congress here. We need Congress to work with us on dealing with the issue that's happening at the border.
Why is the administration waiving laws to expedite construction if the border wall is ineffective?
I answered that question a couple times already. I'll answer it one more time for you. This is something that the DHS had to take a step forward in complying with the law. That's it.
Thank you, Karine. Thank you, Karine. As a candidate, President Biden didn't say there will not be another foot of wall constructed that except what was appropriated in 2019. He said there will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration. So something changed. What?
You want us to break the law? Is that what you want? You want us to not comply with the law?
I'm not.
But you want us to not comply with the law. You want us to not be in administrations that follow the rule of law.
You guys do this all the time. The student loans, the student loan forgiveness program. You went to court to fight for that. If this is such a problem, building 20 miles of wall, why not just go to court?
We went to Congress. The Congress appropriates the funding.
Why not
Congress,
fight them more?
Congress appropriates the funding. We asked them to not use that funding for that particular purpose. They denied it, and now we're complying with the law.
If you have to build a border wall, but you don't think that it's going to work, then once it's done, are you just going to tear it down?
I'm not getting into hypotheticals from here. I'm just telling you what I can tell you from here. The facts are that DHS is complying with the law. This is from this was under fiscal year 2019 under Republican leadership, and DHS is required to do this. The president asked multiple times of Congress to reappropriate. They did not, and we're not complying by the law. Thanks, everybody.
It's anti-democratic to blackball newspapers.
Right behind you, okay?
Thank you. This is related to the situation in the House, but is it the view of the White House that the Gang of Eight has an intelligence Gang of Eight that receives the top level briefings from the executive branch, has 8 members, or is the Speaker Pro Tem, Mr. McHenry, getting the security briefings at the very top level, or are there effectively only 7 members with the Speaker being vacant?
I would refer you to this, to the Speaker Pro Tem. I don't have that information for you. I would just refer you to his office. All right, I'm going
You
to
haven't
take...
called on me in 2 seasons, Karine.
And not calling on you today. Go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
You should be ashamed
Go
of
ahead.
that.
Go ahead.
That shows
Go ahead.
disrespect to a free and
Go
independent
ahead.
media. It's a black
I'm
press,
gonna
one of our
quote-
country's
I'm gonna-
largest and most widely read newspapers, Karine. That shows contempt for a free and independent press.
Go ahead. I'm calling on somebody who I haven't called in a long time as well. Go ahead.
Thanks. Why?
Thank you, Karine. Does President Biden think the anti-Israel protesters in this country are extremists?
What I can say is what we've been very clear about this. When it comes to anti-Semitism, there is no place. We have to make sure that we speak against it very loud and be very clear about that. Remember, what the president decided to, when the president decided to run for president, is what he saw in Charlottesville in 2017, when he saw neo-Nazis marching down the streets of Charlottesville with vile anti-Semitic just hatred. And he was very clear then, and he's very clear now. He's taken actions against this over the past 2 years, and he's continued to be clear. There is no place for this type of vile and despite this kind of rhetoric.
And we hear you guys, though, talk about extremists all the time. It is usually about MAGA extremists. So what about these protesters who are making Jewish students feel unsafe on college campuses? Are they extremists?
I've been very, very clear. We are calling out any form of hate. Any form of hate. It is not acceptable. It should not be acceptable here. And we are going to continue to call that out. And let me be very clear. This is a president that has continued to have that fight in his office, in this administration. You know, when he repealed Trump's Muslim ban on his first day in office, that is something that this president did. He also established an inter-policy committee to counter Islamophobia.
2 topics. There was ruling from a Texas judge earlier today that allowed a pregnant woman whose fetus has a fatal diagnosis to obtain an abortion. And it appears to be the first time since the Dobbs ruling that a woman in the U.S. has asked the court specifically to approve an immediate abortion. So I wanted to know the White House response to that ruling, or a comment on the expected appeal of that decision from the state of Texas.
Yeah, so saw that ruling. Let me just first say that no woman should have to go to a court to get the health care that she needs. That should not be the case. No woman should have to do that. So let me just start off by saying that. So we are glad that this person will get the care that she needs from her doctor. Again, should be her decision to be made with her doctor, which is sometimes some really difficult decisions that women have to make. And this is an administration that's been really clear about that, fighting for the rights for women to make decisions on their health care, and we're going to continue to speak loud and clear about that. But we should not detract from the fact that stories like hers are becoming all too common in states where Republican elected officials are enforcing dangerous extreme bills that threaten the lives of women. And so since that Supreme Court, as you just mentioned, overturned Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decisions, women are being denied medical care they desperately need in order to preserve their health and even save their lives. They've been turned away at emergency rooms, forced to delay care at grave risk to their own health, left with complications that threaten their ability to bear children in the future, and made to travel hundreds of miles for medical care that they need. So ensuring women have access to emergency medical care has been a core focus of this administration since the Dobbs decision, and we're going to continue to fight for that. And we're going to make sure that providing care and giving guidance to doctors and hospitals about emergency care that is required under federal law, that we make sure that we provide that information as well. But this is an administration that's spoken loud and clear since day one. Since day one, you heard from the president, you've heard from the vice president, you've heard from me and others that we are going to continue to fight for women to get the care that they need to make these decisions on their own, these personal decisions that they should be making with medical doctors.
I have 2 questions on the Hunter Biden case. Any reaction to what we saw last night, new charges, and then I have a follow-up.
Look, I mean, the president has said this before, and he will continue to say, which is that he loves his son and supports him as he continues to rebuild his life. I'm going to be really careful and not comment on this and refer you to the Department of Justice or my colleagues at the White House Counsel, but that's what I'm not going to go beyond telling you all what the president has said over and over again. He's proud of his son, and he is building his life back up.
I know you want charges directly, but can you speak at least to the emotional toll the charges are having on the president?
I'm just not going to comment beyond what I just shared.
Are they speaking to each other?
I'm not going to, and we've been pretty consistent on this, I'm not going to comment on private conversation that the president has with his family members.
Headlines when we took off that Hunter Biden's attorney, Abby Lowell, has offered to testify, but publicly. Does the White House support that? Will White House counsel advise him? And should a witness get to negotiate under those terms on how they should be able to testify?
You know, here's what I'll say about that is House Republicans should really focus on American families instead of the president's family. That's what Americans want to see. They want to see, we just had a few minutes about talking about lowering costs and what matters to the American people just a second ago. And that's what they should be focused on. Focus on the American families and their needs and what they want, and not the president's family. Anything else that's related to this, I would certainly refer you to the White House Counsel, my colleagues.
They're focused on it. Should he participate?
Pardon me?
They are focused on the Biden family, so should the president's son participate? Should he testify?
I just answered your question. I think I was very clear on what House Republicans should focus on. They should focus on the American family instead of the president.
Only because you said it before, I just want to re-up in light of these new charges. You said before that the president would not pardon his son. Is that still the case?
Nothing has changed. That is still the case. I was going to call on you.
You were.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. Is it likely that any legislation that gets to the president's desks that extends military funding for Ukraine includes policy changes as it relates to immigration, U.S. immigration policy?
Look, negotiations are currently happening. Not going to get into hypotheticals from here. I know, but is it likely, which is a hypothetical. I'm going to let the negotiations happen. Not going to get into specifics from here. I'm going to let the negotiators do their work. And once we have, certainly, once there's something to share, we will share that.
President Zelensky spent a full day here in Washington yesterday. He had an all-senators meeting. He met with the House Speaker. He met with the President. No minds appear to be changed as a result of all of the meetings that he had. So what did he accomplish by coming here to Washington?
Well, negotiations are still happening. So we'll see. I think, look, President Zelensky has made multiple trips here before. This is someone who speaks passionately. He's the leader of a country that's at war against Russia, who invaded their country. I remember listening to him talk about what they're going through, the children, the people, the folks who have lost their lives, who have lost everything. I mean, who else is it better to hear from directly than President Zelensky? And I think it was an important visit for him to be here. I think it was incredibly important for him to talk to senators, for him to talk to House members, for him to stand right here in the White House next to President Biden to answer your questions and to speak very forcefully and passionately about what's going on. Almost 2 years. Just think about the lives that they've lost. But yet, they fought very bravely. And so I think it was good that President Zelensky, the president was happy to host him here and have a conversation with him, and I think it was important for him to be here.